All right, brother.
For authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs, listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me tonight is going to be Zen Garcia. And we're going to be discussing his latest book, The Sons of God. And before we get started discussing this, and before I introduce Zen, who's been on my show in the past, and we've always conducted a fantastic show together, in my opinion. But before we get to all of that, I wanted to let everybody know, or remind everybody that I'm no longer Paranormal Palace Radio. I have switched my name to Talk Now Radio, and I've started doing variety instead of just paranormal. I have not, gotten away from paranormal, and I have not gotten away from works of spirit, works of religion, or anything else. I have simply added to it, and I'm including sports, news, entertainment. I mean, whatever you can think of, I decided to just offer me a big, broader base of knowledge that I can learn from as I go. And also the call-in number would be 832-632-7904. If you guys are listening somewhere other than at Talk Now Radio, I invite y'all to get a free membership to my site at www.talknowradio.com, and that will let you into the chat room. And you can also sign up for a free newsletter while you're at it. And we'd love to have more people in chat to discuss these shows when we have them, in fact. Now, if you want to learn more about Zen, you can find out more about him at www.fallenangelstv. And he's got a social network of his own over there, complete with groups, forums, blogs, photo gallery, video gallery, music gallery. He has all kinds of information about his work that he's been researching over there, places to discuss his work and learn more, and a place to contact him over there. Everything you could possibly want. I really recommend you go over there and join up. In fact, I'm a member over there, and he's even been gracious enough to allow me one of his groups over there to post my shows in, because he needs some of his members who just might want to know what I had going on. So, Zen, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, brother, and it's an honor to be here with you, Royce, and just want you to know that we're all praying for you, brother.
Oh, well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And while you're mentioning that, for the y'all that don't know about it yet, I've been diagnosed with emphysema, brachionitis, and MAC, and my lungs are pretty much in pretty terrible condition. So if I do cough during a show, just overlook it. I do try to mute it, but I'm not always successful at getting to the mute button in time, especially when I'm talking and it hits me suddenly. So just overlook that should it happen, and hopefully it won't happen. Also, if you folks are listening and all of a sudden there's no sound, it's possible that I had a power failure because it's raining over here. If that happens, me and Zen will reschedule this. Don't worry about that. If it doesn't happen, we're going to continue on with the show. Just wanted to know so nobody be surprised. Zen, you want to tell us a little something real quick about what got you interested? Your book is really not that far off topic from Lucifer, the father of Cain, but it is a branch off. What motivated you to kind of, do this supplement, you might call it?
Well, people were interested, and a lot of my listeners and the readers, they wanted to know about pre-existence and predestination, and about our first estate, how we were involved in what had transpired before our incarnations here in the flesh. Because what most people don't realize is that we did have prior lives, spiritual lives. And when I speak about spiritual life and a prior life, I'm not necessarily talking about incarnating multiple times over a lifetime and various different embodiments, but I'm speaking about how we pre-existed before our flesh, and that we had a spiritual aspect of ourselves that is connected to the Father and the Son, the Most High, and that part of us is what occupies our flesh. It's that aspect of us that goes on to dreaming at night, every night when we leave our flesh bodies, and it's also that aspect of us that can have part in salvation and be part of the elect and the righteous, and to return to our first estate.
Well, there is then, if you don't mind me mentioning it, because I'm with you on the same page of what you're talking about right there, but there was one area that I thought about when I was reading the book that I'm not sure if you and me agree on or not, and we don't have to agree on everything, and you know that. We've always been able to agree to disagree. That's not a problem.
Right.
But what I'm curious about is where you stand on this here particular issue. I myself feel like if you're looking for a one-on-one relationship with God, or looking to get closer to God, looking for atonement, that you're not going to find that in any one particular given religion. That if you want a one-on-one relationship with the Father, you have to go inside your own soul, your own self, your own being in prayer and meditation.
Absolutely.
In fact, I think many religions are false.
Yeah, well, a lot of them were brought up by the fallen angels. That's the paganism. A lot of pagan religions were spawned by the fallen angels. That's why they worship a pantheon of multiple gods, and a lot of times those particular religions are involved in victim sacrifice, cannibalism, the drinking of blood, things that are considered abominations by the true creator of us all. And I would agree with you that real knowledge of self and knowledge of the creator comes from introspection and personal seeking. A divine relationship with the Father and the Son is something that stands apart from religion. Even though going through certain religions, you can certainly learn certain things that would allow you to have such experience, but personal relationship comes from seeking, and that is something that is introspection from within, going out into nature by yourself, doing prayer, and it's a desire, an earnest yearning to know the Father and the Son, to know the secrets of the universe, to come to know the higher aspects for our life and being that leads one into truth and revelation. And all of that comes from the Creator, not from a book or a religion or a building or another pastor or minister. It comes from seeking through self-introspection.
And I would agree with you 100% on that. And I really wanted to bring that up. Like I say, I was reading your book, and one of the things that you were mentioning in that book is how these fallen angels were the father of many religions and the roles that they played. And I found it was important to cover this particular area because of the fact that, well, with the fallen angels' interference in early man's religion, it made for a big umbrella of deception in today's age that really makes it hard for anybody to come close to God unless they understand that they have to take an initiative themselves, in other words.
Absolutely. And that was part of their purpose. Another aspect of the paganism and the idolatry that the fallen ones was established was the Matrix. And, you know, everybody's watched those movies, and we understand that as being the whole American dream, the 9 to 5, everybody go to school for 18 years of your life and then get a job to so you can make enough money to, you know, live within the system and to support the system. And then when you're 65 years old and worn out and tired enough, you can finally retire to enjoy life. And most people buy into that belief system and support it 100% without ever thinking outside of the box, so to speak, into in seeking out something other than what we've been taught. And so most people adhere to that and believe it their whole lives, but there's a spiritual part of life and being that can fulfill us greater than, the carnal aspects of the physical world, because a lot of that is an illusion. And so many people buy into the American dream, but find that when they go into it and they learn that it isn't necessarily the thing that brings happiness. And so that's a hard lesson to learn. And then a lot of times people are so led astray by the world and by life that they never, ever get to a point where they start to seek anything greater than, the things that they've been taught.
Well, I think I've also seen in a lot of people's that they seek happiness in the outside world. And in all honesty, there is no real happiness in the outside world, much less any permanent, lasting value. If a person, at least to my way of thinking, after 54 years on this planet or in this reality, is if you're going to be happy, you have to be happy with what you got and in the circumstances you have to deal with, because you ain't going to have nothing else to be happy with.
Mm-hmm.
It's within yourself you find the happiness, not with what's going on externally. Now, I think once we pass on out of this reality into the heavenly reality, that could be a different story. But, with the first Adam, he brought into this here through temptation where we're at now, so we had to cope with what we got now until that day. Right.
And that's all, all of us are incarnating into the flesh now is our test, our trial, to redo, because I also speak about this in my book, how it was some of the things that we did during our first embodiment, our spiritual lives, because we were part of the divine council, the sons of God. We pre-existed with the Father and the Son, and we were with the angels. And the war in heaven was the deciding factor that caused the separation of light and darkness. And that also was when Lucifer, as the first archangel cherub, he led 1/3 of the angels in rebellion. And so a lot of us here in the flesh now were part of those that didn't side one way or the other within the war. Some here are of the elect, and some here are of those that sided with Lucifer and his insurrection and rebellion. And so in this lifetime, in this embodiment, we have a chance to, renew our vows and to realign our allegiance to either the Father and the Son or Lucifer and the fallen angels. And that will determine our eternal inheritance. And really, that's what life and being is about. And most people don't realize that and forget, never even live up or aspire to find answers to all of those questions.
Okay. Now, when I was reading your book, what you were just mentioning is one thing that stood out to me as an underlying thread throughout the whole book is about this here fact that we are really kind of here in the long run to make a choice. Basically, the choice is, who are we going to serve?
Right. Yeah.
And this has to do with the fact that in the beginning, some were against God or some were against good, and some sat on the fence. So rather than have any fence sitters or any people undecided or in rebellion, it's better to give everybody a chance to make a decision once and for all. Is that pretty much what it boils down to?
Yeah, that's what life and embodiment and being is about. Because now those that make no choice, because it speaks about this in the Word in Revelation, Christ talks about those that are lukewarm. The Laodicean church says that sit on the fence in this lifetime. If you make no choice and you get caught up in the carnal aspects of world and being and are just okay with the comforts of living, he's going to spew you out. He's going to count you as siding with Lucifer and the fallen ones. So we now have to make a choice. We have to live for either or and determine our allegiance and decide what's important to us, because it's only through making those decisions that we can have a return to our first estate. Otherwise, you will be counted, with the fallen ones and with those that are basically inheritance of damnation.
And I would imagine from God's perspective, He just simply wants to know, where does everybody stand? I want to know where my loyalties lie.
Right. And that's what this life is about.
And you did a good job of pointing that there out. And then one of the things that you did, because, there's been so much controversy on the internet that I've seen over the years about one camp says, yes, there is a serpent seed. Another one says, no, there isn't one. The theologians can't agree on it. Another camp says that there's a messianic bloodline, and they attribute that to Cain, which that was a long story, and you'd have to have been familiar with Lawrence Gardner's work to understand that one. But moving on with where I was really going with that, you've actually found the Scripture. Now, it wasn't, spelled out in the Bible as we know it today, but you did find Scripture that actually confirmed this other seed line. I think part of it was the Coburn Bible, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, not just the Coburn Bible, but
that's why I said part.
Right. I found so many. And my fourth book set the premise for all that. Because it's my opinion that that is one of the biggest secrets that can help, once people have discernment on it, it can help people learn what all of this is really about and why we see so much chaos in the world and why there's continuous war, why we have a new world order and what the elites are supporting, why they worship Lucifer and the fallen angels. Once you understand that there are two seed lines and that what was spoken about as the parable of the garden with Adam and Eve eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, good and evil, how that led to the birth of Cain, and how Cain was a murderer and a liar and a deceiver, and why it says that he was of that wicked one. And it says also that that he was, those that were the killers from Abel to Zacharias, that it goes all the way back to Cain. It's that there's the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. It all goes back to there being a different bloodline on this planet. And once people can wrap their minds around that and understand that, so much of the Scriptures will explain itself in a way that it never has before. Specifically, like Matthew chapter 13, where the Lord speaks about an enemy having snuck into the garden and sowing the tares. That was Lucifer. That was Satan. Cain and his bloodline. That's why in chapter 4 they are excluded from Adam's genealogy, which begins in chapter 5. And so once you have the eyes to see, the mind to understand, the ears to hear, all of that makes sense, and discernment will lead one to revelation unlike it ever has before. The other thing that I wrote about, and specifically in the Sons of God, the one that we're talking about now, is about how we have pre-existence and how we're predestinated and we have pre-election for this lifetime. And I explain all of that so people can understand and not identify with just our physical aspects of our life and being, because we are so much greater than our physical bodies. Once people can align themselves with the spiritual aspect and that part of themselves, they can learn that they can have part in eternal inheritance, because there is an aspect of themselves that is connected to the Father and the Son. We're co-creators with the Creator of all things, and that aspect of ourselves can do incredible things, just miracle accomplishments, if we come to identify with the wonderful abilities and capacities that we have been blessed and granted to be able to do and to perform.
And that is true. Well, it's true for me anyway. I don't like to say true because so many people would disagree, And then you'd get into something that, well, they'd say, well, prove it right now. I'm making a potato appear in my hand. Well, you know, this is unrealistic, but this is where people go. But you and I both know what we mean when we say it.
Right.
At any rate, I was still thinking about your book. You said something just a minute ago, and this is something I've said many times in the past myself. In order to understand end-time prophecy and what's happening now, you need to know what happened in the very beginning that led you up to now. And this is where I find work like yours to be so important, is you lay everything out where people can really fully understand what's going on. And it was really while reading your book, I mean, because I've always had a thing about religion that I never really wanted to be a part of it, although I did want to serve God. But now I begin to understand, you know, better where I was coming from with that, because while I was reading your book, that it came to me like, hey, all religion is man-made. You have to go through a preacher or a pope or a priest or somebody to get to God. It's like they don't all call themselves vicar gods, but that is the position they fill. That's what they end up doing. And I'm like, well, as long as you got a middleman in there, then you don't know. You have to take full faith in that middleman. And any books written by that middleman and anything that's taught by this middleman, unless you can go straight to the source yourself, in other words.
Yes.
So,
and that's important because, yes, people can utilize certain pastors, ministers, and preachers as intercessories to lead them to the Father and the Son, but you have to go on a personal quest. You have to go beyond that because you have to have a direct relationship with the Father and the Son to be led to true discernment and revelation. And it's them that you need to worship, not a book or a religion or a certain pastor or preacher or minister. You have to put the Father and the Son on that pedestal and only bow to them. You don't want to, bow to anybody else, even to angels. We're not to worship angels, and that's so many do that as well. So you have to be careful.
Yeah, and that leads me right back to a scripture that came to mind when I read that. Blind leaders of the blind, they shall both fall into the ditch. And when people follow a religion, they become blind followers of a blind religion that thinks they're following God, and then them and the religion both fall into the ditch. Right.
And that's the state of the world. That's why we see so much chaos today, is you have the blind leading the blind. And so that's the insanity of what we see within the world.
And there was something else that came to my mind in that book, and I had it on my tongue just a minute ago that I found very interesting. I'm trying to recover it. It was something that few people really catch or know that caught my eye that I wanted to bring out. If I remember it in a minute, I'll come back to mind with it.
Sure.
I know it had to do with Adam and Eve. In the meantime, you was wanting to mention something about Revelation earlier. Why don't we bring that up while I think about it?
Oh, yeah, certainly. You and I, we were talking a little bit earlier about how they have basically told you that you have short time. And I had mentioned Revelation 12, which speaks about the woman clothed in the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, a child within her womb, and a crown of 12 stars. It's Revelation 12:1, and a couple verses into that. But that particular sign that is spoken about in Revelation 12 is actually something that happens within the celestial skies on September 23rd, the Feast of Trumpets on 2017. And it's my opinion that that particular day is going to be very important for us as being the last generation, the fig tree generation. And it's also my opinion that we are the last generation, and that when Christ was speaking about the fig tree generation as defined by Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, that he said, "Know ye the parable of the fig tree." And he was saying that to his followers because it was a very important thing for those that would be of the last generation. And what that was is that on November 29th, 1947, a commandment was put forth by the United Nations for the recreation of Israel. There's a particular text called the Apocalypse of Peter, which speaks about the recreation of the fig tree, the parable of the fig tree, where Peter asked Christ specifically, and he tells him that the parable of the fig tree is connected to the nation of Israel, to the people of Israel, and that that fig tree parable was fulfilled when Israel came together as a nation in our lifetime. And so we would be the last generation, that there would be one generation from that particular time, which is like 70 years. And so, the Revelation 12, in my opinion, is going to be very important for us, as the last generation, and, that something significant will happen on that particular day. Also in 2015, there will be 4 blood red moons on 4 of the very important feast days of the Jewish, the Hebraic peoples, and that would be very significant for us as well. And there's another thing that a guy named Dewey Bruton, he puts together some information on Daniel's timeline, and he's basically plotted how Daniel's timeline, it all lines up with the end date of 2017. And so his work in Revelation 12, as being a celestial phenomena, it all leads to something significant happening on 2017. Whether that's, the last day, the last trump, the true rapture of the church, or some other significant event, we won't know until we get there. But it is my opinion that 2017 will be a pivotal year for all of us as the fig tree generation.
It could be a marker of a ending era or a beginning era too, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It could, it could mark the beginning of the last 7 years of tribulation. We don't know. We won't know until we get there. But it is my opinion that it will be very significant.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens in those times.
Right.
This part is not in your book, but I can't help but be curious. Do you think the Vatican or the Catholic Church plays a role in the end time scenario? I know I do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because they're, the woman riding on the scarlet beast, and the whole, because the Roman Catholic Church is a pagan church. They still worship the fallen angels. The fact that the Pope wears what is called a mitre and is connected to Dagon, or who is referenced as Dagon in the Old Testament, whom we know as Dogon, or is also called Oannes. That's worship of the fallen angels. Even the virgin worship is connected to Astarte, Ishtar, Inanna is her Sumerian name. And so the Catholic Church still, does idolatry, pagan worship, and is involved in such. And the whole thing with the obelisk, even the Vatican Church, at the very bottom, where only the Pope and the cardinals can go. They showed this in a series on History Channel, which was quite amazing to me because we're not privileged to see this, but they showed where the popes and the cardinals go down underneath the cathedral, the main cathedral, to do their own worship, and they are involved. There's a upside down cross there, and so that lets you know where their their allegiance lies.
Well, I know that some of the study that I've did recently, I found online, and I have not been able to verify it yet. You might, or I might, who knows which one, or somebody else. But that they found some research out there. Somebody has found a artifact out in the Middle East somewhere. I forget where. I don't have it in front of me. But it had indicated that Yahweh was really, in all actuality, Adad or Baal, and that he had it was either Ishtar or Astarte was his consort, and that he was the original Israelites and also the original Hyksos god. If that was true, I would find it interesting, inasmuch as when I read Zechariah Sitchin's work, one of the things he said in one of his books, I forget which one, was that he talked about the number, he didn't talk about the number 636. However, he talked about the number system. The gods had their epithets, in other words, their ranks, I think it was. Some was rank 50, some was 6, some was 60, you know what I'm talking about. And I got to think about the mark of the beast. I traced it sometime several years back. I'd have to go back and redo it again. But I found that Adad, his rank and his father's rank, etc., if you added everything together, would come to 636, in other words, which would bring it back to Yahweh if that thing was true, and if I was right. So I thought that might be of interest to you if you wanted to study it.
I never heard about that, but it's my opinion that, and I don't know exactly what you're talking about as far as that, but in my research I've connected to Isis, Inanna, Astarte, Ishtar, to the what I call the unholy trinity, which is Osiris, Horus, and Isis, and that Yahweh is whom I would call and connect to being as the creator of whom I call the creator, but that those other gods are connected to the fallen angels and to paganism, and so that's the research.
Well, that would leave a possibility that perhaps somebody has slidden this in there, trying to use Yahweh's name and align it to the ancient fallen angels.
Right. Of course, they do that in the Gnostic texts as well, to discredit the biblical text and the Hebrew Israelites and the knowledge that they have left to us in the Old and the New Testament. And so this would not be the first attempt, it would not be the last, and certainly even the strong delusion which is connected to what I consider to be the fallen angels and the worship of what is now the ancient aliens, that so many people are trying to even say that Christ was
an alien.
Or an ascended master, or connected to the ancient aliens. And there's a whole belief system that is being put forth that the ancient aliens are our creators, and they're the ones that created humanity, which in my opinion is also a lie.
And that very well could be, and I'm not 100% sure. But at the same time, I wouldn't discount the fact that since we don't know how much of the Bible was doctored by men, where the part of Yahweh actually is, and what names are actually used for convenience. Now, I do know that there's been a book out recently by Flavio Burbello that said he had traced Josephus, and that Josephus was one of the original priests that came down Moses' line, and that Josephus and his descendants infiltrated the Vatican, and we know that today the Vatican is run by Jews, is what some are saying. There could be some kind of connection in there.
It could be. I haven't heard of his work and don't really know about him.
Well, I haven't actually got a chance to read his book. And again, this is all speculation, so
yeah.
I would tell anybody, don't take what I'm saying, as actual fact. The truth of the matter is, I have not saved links. I have not documented things as I found them like I should. And I could really quote this stuff a lot better if I had. I'm just pulling up old memories of things that I've read through the years. So I'm not the most reliable source, but I'm throwing it out there as speculation.
Well, I know certainly, Royce, you've done a whole lot more homework and research along those lines than I ever have. And so, I give you props for that. You've certainly read a lot of books and looked into a lot of things that I never had a chance to. And so,
I think you're very well from different angles.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times, the things that we're learning about, certainly, all of us, are picking up different pieces of the puzzle, so to speak.
Yeah. And, the thing that's important about what we're doing right now, talking about it, Zen, is we're showing how there's things in here that people should be checking out more thoroughly before they just align themselves to any organization. In other words, I've seen it happen through the years. People were not Christians, never thought about church, walk into a church, somebody invite them to a church, they go to one or two services, wham, that church is living in and can do no wrong, at least until it kicks them off somewhere down the road. And then the next church fills the same role. But nobody has actually done like you and me have done, and it said, well, what's the history of this church? Where does it fit into prehistory? What's the origins? Where are they coming from? To really know anything about it. And it's a weak foundation, in other words.
Yeah, well, most people are caught up in the world. They don't really dedicate themselves to knowing anything other than what's coming on TV that night. They study the TV guide more than they do anything else. And so that reflects in their spiritual nature. They're not true seekers.
Well, I do know one thing. This kind of research, to me, is important. And if you don't study it and you don't learn something about it, when the end time does come, you're going to get caught with your britches down. And what was it that was said by Jesus about not having oil in the lamps?
Right. And, it's exactly the wise versions and the foolish versions, and those that are ready for those things that are coming, because we're warned in Matthew 24, the same scriptures that tell us about the parable of the fig tree. Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, he tells us that the things that are coming upon the world are some of the most horrific that have ever been, and that what we will experience in this lifetime is worse than anything that has ever been, ever, at any point in history prior.
And I don't know what that's going to be like. I don't know when. I can't swear if, but I know that if the Holocaust could happen, if the Crusades could happen, the Inquisitions could happen, why couldn't something else just as tragic or worse not happen in the future? And why would not anybody want to learn from history, since they all say those that don't learn from history are damned to repeat it?
Right.
Which brings us right back to square one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's important to do your study, to do your homework, to look into what's coming upon the world, so that you can be ready for those things. Otherwise, you'll, like the foolish virgins that didn't have oil in their lamps, you'll get caught with your pants down.
Well, you brought up an interesting thing a few minutes ago that caught my attention when you were mentioning the feast day things that were going to be happening. You were expecting September 17th. I never thought to look for a link between prophecy and feast days. But it would make perfect sense to use feast days as kind of a commemorator of important events that passed and important events to come.
Oh yeah, well the feast days are important to the Father and to the Son, and so it's my opinion that very special things will occur on those particular days, and that absolutely they will be important and significant to those that are the last generation.
The trick is to learn what each one's representative of. How many feast days are there? I forget. I really do.
I know that there are 4 that are very important, but I couldn't tell you all of them myself. There's probably more than that, but I know like Passover, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Trumpets. That those are some of the important ones.
Well, some people I've read about online have marked the Feast of Tabernacles with Jesus' birth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they were correct in that or not.
Yeah, in that work that I was mentioning to you earlier about Dewey Bruton and the things that he has done, it talks about how Christ, when he came into the flesh, he fulfilled two of those festivals, and so that's why he also says that the fall feast, that Christ fulfilled the spring feast, but that the fall feast would also be important, and that those are ones that have not yet been fulfilled, and that's why he's looking for special events to occur on the Feast of Trumpets. And so that's why I was saying that
so feast days are markers.
Yes, and that's why I was saying that what happens on September 23rd of 2017, with it fallen on the Feast of Trumpets, that could be a fulfillment of what the research that Dewey Bruton was doing. And so that could be very important for us. It could be a time marker, certainly, for us, and that we should, pay attention to it.
Well, don't other cultures have the same feast days, only call them something different?
I would think so, but I'm not positive on that. I couldn't tell you for sure.
That'd be something interesting to find out.
Mm-hmm.
And also to find out the meaning of them, what they were supposed to be representative of.
Right.
Because many of them, if they represented one thing. See, I've often heard and read that when things happen, they happen in pairs. Like Joseph was a precursor to Jesus, for example.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Everything has a precursor, like a feast day will happen twice. It's celebrated every year, but it'll have 2 marker points. The Passover happened back in the Israelites when they were slaves, and then it'll happen again sometime in the future, for example.
Right. It just like as in the days of Noah,
exactly.
that there would be a repeat of that.
So if you could find out what they were representative of, then you'd know what you expect from them in today's age, is what I'm getting at.
Right, exactly, yeah. And I know also, like a lot of Christian holidays now are actually pagan holidays, and that when Constantine pretty much married the pagan church with the Christian church, that they aligned certain Christian holidays on pagan festival days, and that's why we have some like Easter and Christmas. Some of those things are connected to.
With absolutely zero biblical foundation.
Right, exactly.
And I've had people get so mad at me when I challenged them to show me December 25th is Christ's birthday in the Bible. They get real offended over that one.
Yeah, I know. I go through it as well, because I don't put up Christmas trees. I don't celebrate it.
Well, I don't mind putting it up for the kiddies, but I make sure everybody knows this is not about a Christ celebration.
Right. Well, there's a passage in, I believe it's Jeremiah, that's...
Yes, there is. I think it's chapter 10. I could be wrong. Chapter 10, verse 23, I want to say.
Right. It's specific about not putting up Christmas trees, and so I don't.
Well, when I read it, it went on to talk about and expect it to heal, or it has no power to heal or to give life or anything. And it was like you're putting it up in form of worship, in other words.
Right, right.
Now, it could have meant not to do it at all, but I figured if you just, putting up something pretty, for the kids, it's not like worship, so maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah. I'm just, I'm just careful I try to adhere to the commandments and to follow them to the best of my ability, and of course everybody interprets things differently, so.
Oh yeah, everybody's understanding of things is different, much less their interpretation.
Right, right.
But, it's still, like, the thing that is important here, though, is it may be one thing for a person to put up a tree and, hey, kids, look at the pretty lights and all that. We're just decorating this time of year. But it's another thing when preachers put out nativity scenes and they go in the pulpit and preach about Jesus' birthday and call it a sacred and holy day. And they even have Christmas trees in their church commemorate. That's going a whole lot further than just saying, I want us to have a pretty tree today. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that one is right and the other is wrong, but one of them makes a much more definite statement than the other.
Right.
At least in my way of thinking it does. And then, to top that off, the people that have the nativity scenes, they never get them right. They go off of the teaching of man's and not what the Bible actually says, because they would find out there were no 3 wise men there according to the Bible.
Oh, that's interesting.
No, you can go back and read the Bible. They get 3 from the fact that there was 3 gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but it actually never says how many men, in other words.
Oh, that's really interesting. I've missed that myself.
Actually, I used to miss it too till I seen Fred Price preach on it, and I looked it up and checked them out. And I don't know about you, I'm sure you do this too. When somebody quotes a passage of Scripture to me, I go back and double check it myself. When somebody tells me something, like I read something in your book, I go back and check it myself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you should absolutely do that. I mean, I think it's important to not just believe what people say or to, take them for their word on certain things, but that you really have to look into it for yourself and to get confirmation on those kind of things.
Well, I don't think God would blame anybody for getting it wrong in good conscience, but if you just follow everybody else and take their word for it, then you become kind of like those fence sitters you were talking about earlier, don't you?
Right, exactly, yeah. You got to do the homework for yourself.
I think God would rather you do the homework yourself, misinterpret it, make a mistake, and teach you right, than see you sit up there and say, well, you just tell me. I'll follow blindly like a blind sheep.
Right, exactly. Because that's what's wrong with the world, is we have the blind leading the blind. And so many people are being led astray because they won't do their homework and they totally trust and believe in the opinions and perspectives of others.
And a lot of them, like I said, they just want to believe in what others say because they don't want to take the time or they don't have the time. And, well, I'll just go with what I got. That sounds good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a large part of, why so many are led astray.
They might be acting in good conscience, but, on the surface, in as much as they really believe it, in other words, what they're hearing. But they're not acting in good conscience in as much as they believe it at face value.
Right. Right.
And that's where the trap comes in.
Mm-hmm. People have to do their homework. They have to put effort into, because we have the spiritual, we have a spiritual nature, and we have a carnal, a physical nature, and we dedicate so much time and effort to our carnal natures. without giving any time, any effort, any focus to our spiritual aspects of our life and being. And that's where people go wrong, is they don't dedicate any time to, seeking the kingdom and nourishing themselves in that way.
Yeah, and that therein lies the whole catch of all of this for me, because I've said this before, and I'm sure you'll agree with this one. If people tended to the Spirit and tended to their relationship with God, if everybody did this, well, there would be no need to go to heaven, because you would be creating heaven here on earth.
Yes. And if we did create heaven in here on earth, we certainly wouldn't need all the lessons of pain and suffering, and because this is a dual-natured world where we're learning through the knowledge of good and evil, and because we have free will as angels, as fallen and people, humanity, and the angels. But because we're trying to be as gods ourselves, and we forget about the Creator and about His Son, is why we create so much chaos, and why it is that we are learning through this world and through our lessons in it why we need a sovereign God, why we need an omnipotent, just and benevolent Creator, because otherwise this is what we would end up with. This is the kind of chaos we would create.
One of the things that you found in your scripture that got my attention, that you wrote in your book, was how the Archons and Yaldabaoth, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, was actually trying to catch the light of Christ as it entered into the souls of men when man was being created and filled with life. Their original intent was to trap it there so that they could make it serve man, or not man, make them serve them from then on, because they never wanted to bow down to the Adam in the first place. They wanted Adam to bow down to them.
Right. Yeah, that's why the whole thing for this fallen world, that's why it was, created, and that's why we were given chance to incarnate into the flesh, is because the fallen ones did want to capture us and connect us and keep us lost in this fallen world. But that's why we're here, to prove our allegiance and to show ourselves approved to the Father and the Son, so that we can have part in a return to our first estate, in part in paradise and eternal salvation. Otherwise, because this world is really just an illusion, and it's all just temporary. It's going to go away, and so we have to learn again what's important for life and being, and really come to realization as to what we're really here to do. And so that's what this life is really all about.
And that brings us back full circle to where we was at a minute ago about why it's so important to do all of this here studying. We wouldn't never realize that there are forces out there that wish to see us stay in an enslaved state rather than find any freedom to heaven whatsoever. Right. So
absolutely, they want to keep us trapped down and tied to this carnal world, and the fallen angels do not want to see any of the sons of God, any of their children of humanity, make it. They don't want to see us inherit those places which they left, their first estate, their place of habitation, because we're going to inherit those positions which they lost and were banished from.
Now, I just remember what I was going to say earlier, because when I was reading the book, one of the things that it came out to me, and I've read this on some of the same scriptures you have. I didn't read all of them you did, but I did read some of them before we met during my studies. At any rate, we had both read this one scripture that was describing how, and I think it was the Apocalypse of Adam. In the beginning, when God created the Adam, Lucifer did not want to bow down and observe Adam as being superior to him. He felt like he was made out of fire and we were made out of dust, in other words.
Yes.
That made him better.
Right.
Now, I always thought, even when reading your book, even before I got your book, that did seem a bit unfair of God. But as I was reading your book before I got to the end, I began to realize why God would do that and it would not be fair. It's because Lucifer was a created son of God, and the Adam was a begotten son of God.
Yeah, and one of the things, as far as that particular thing, happened twice, and I explain this in my work and in my book. The first time that Lucifer refused to bow was to Christ as the first Adam. He did not want to concede and give dominion, because he was the first archangel and he was head over all of the angels. But he did not want to bow down to Christ and to give up authority over the angels. That was what led to iniquity and insurrection. The second time was the creation of Adam, as you spoke about. And he did not want, the world to be given over to Adam. He didn't want Adam to have dominion over paradise. And so he plotted the fall of humanity, and he deceived Eve and, caused Eve to be impregnated with Cain, and that's what, led to our fall.
Yeah, and I'm glad you really cleared that up, because I really didn't do a good job of it. I did mean when I said the Adam, the Christ, because everybody, even the Apostle Paul, mentioned that, referred to Jesus once as the first Adam.
Yes,
And I did mean it. When I said the Adam, I meant the Christ as the first Adam, and I did not specify that, so I'm glad you brought it out.
Yeah. And I explain all those things in my book as far as the first Adam and the second Adam of paradise. And I even speak about how after Adam fell, that their bodies were transformed into flesh on the 8th day. And that the flesh bodies became essentially an agreement was the flesh bodies were an agreement between the fallen angels and also the higher angels. And so that's why we have a dual nature. That's why we have that's why we learn through both good and evil.
Alrighty. Now, is there anything you want to mention that I might not have thought to cover about this here book? Because it's in my opinion, it's a very worthwhile read. It's very informative. And even if a person was not to agree with all your conclusions, I guarantee you they wouldn't be able to argue much with your research. If it ain't worth nothing else, and believe me, it is worth more, but if it wasn't worth nothing else, it is worth the fact that all these different scriptures from all these different cultures have been compiled into this one place. Not the full books of scriptures, no, but the parts pertaining to this subject, where they're easy to get to in one location, instead of you having to go search for hours, days, and weeks to find it yourself.
Well, I think, and a lot of people that have contacted me have told me that it has helped them to understand the Bible in a way that they never had before. And so, I would recommend people study the sources that are cited within the text, but to do your own homework, to do your own research, and to come to your own conclusions, to doubt everything that I bring before you, but to study it for yourself and then, confirm, or if you have differing opinions, and you disagree with certain things, that's fine. But do your own homework, do your own research. Don't believe anything that anybody says, but confirm it for yourself through your own research.
And I would agree with you, and I say this all the time. I don't care if it's something I'm telling you, if it's something that one of my guests are telling you. It doesn't really matter if it's the preacher, the pope, or anyone, even the president. There is no substitute for finding out for yourself. And in the end, ultimately, it's going to come from man, because everything's been documented from the beginning of time has come from man. But at least the more you study, the more you learn, the better you can get a clear picture of your own without taking somebody else's word. And let's face it, you can't follow one religion and know for sure that it's the one true gospel and it really knows God's will, when all of them are claiming it and they're all different. I mean, somewhere down the line, you surely have to realize that they can all have the best of intentions, but they can't all be on the right path.
Yeah, and you know, again, it goes back to that thing that it's a personal relationship. It comes through seeking and knocking and coming to find for yourself. You can't believe and trust what everybody else is telling you. You have to put forth the effort. You have to do the homework, study for yourself to come to know the things that will lead you to experience and direct revelation of the Father and the Son.
Right. And don't misconstrue anything I say as to that you shouldn't go to church. That's far from the case. I think church is great for people that enjoy it. They enjoy the fellowship. But there's nothing that says you can't go to church, study, learn everything for yourself. You can maybe even try to be a shining light where you're at by sharing things that you learn. Some churches are open to it, some are not. The only way to find out is to open up your mouth and say something and see what kind of reaction you get.
Right. And I agree. I think a lot of people that, you know, church can be a good thing because it brings fellowship with other individuals and it helps people to start to look into, you know, the Scripture and to seek out truth in the gospel. However, people should do their own homework on all the things that they really need to know, and not to trust anybody about, you know, personal relationship as far as the Father and the Son. That comes from having a relationship just like you have with your mother and your father. And
the more people that go with that one-on-one relationship, it won't matter if you're in church, at work, at home, at school. You begin to socialize with people. You begin to look at people differently when you begin to realize that, hey, what we're doing now ain't working. And then it's easier to become open-minded for other ideas and other views. And again, you don't necessarily have to agree with any of them, to check them out and see for yourself.
Right. And a lot of people are being called out of the churches now to find fellowship with other truth seekers. And that's why a lot of people come to our website and, you know, join us and share conversation and have dialogue on the deeper aspects of life and being than just what is being, you know, taught to us.
And I got a lot of respect for you and for your site, Zen, because you are open to hear other people's views, and you're not just going to shoot them down and they absolutely must needs be wrong. You're willing to sit there and say, well, let's look this up and see.
Absolutely. And I don't, you know, I don't believe that everything that I say is absolutely 100% correct. I learn every day, and I'm learning from other people. And so let's fellowship. Let's have dialogue. Let's share conversation. And because
well, okay. You kind of drifted off for a moment there, Zen. I don't know why.
Sorry about that. Was it the volume or something?
Well, yeah. 1 minute you were talking, the next minute it was silent.
That's strange. Well, I was just saying that I believe everybody has an important story, and that everybody has something relevant to share as far as the discussion.
Yeah, and I say let's grow and learn together, and I think That's where Zen's going with his site.
Absolutely.
So, with that, let's call this one here a wrap so I can go spend some time with my better half, and watch some TV with her before the night is over with. Everybody, don't forget to come back and see me this Saturday at 1 p.m. My guest is going to be Alea, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, A-I-L-A, Akkad, and her book is The Call of the Soul, and we're going to be discussing that at some length Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time. I'm not sure what time that is in your time zone. Invite a friend. Tell them that membership is free. Get you into the chat room. Don't forget to go to www.fallenangelstv.com. That's .com, isn't it, Zen?
No, just fallenangels.tv.
Oh, I'm sorry, fallenangels.tv. And you'll get into Zen's site and get you a free membership over there. Get into his forums, join a discussion, and, say what's on your mind. Be open to learn from whatever other people are saying around you and have open, honest discussion without any of the flame wars that I see at Yahoo. Well, I used to see them. I hadn't seen them in a while. And in the meantime, everybody have a great time. And don't forget, in October, I'm theming it for Halloween, so it's going to... Hang on just a second, folks. I do apologize. That's hitting me suddenly. Sorry about that, folks. Anyway, I'm theming the whole month toward Halloween, so it's going to be about ghost schools, goblins, Samhain, and all of that other stuff that, I wouldn't say you want to worship any of that, but it is fun to talk about. Knocking on doors for candy is fun for kids, certainly, even if it is a little dangerous. I suggest that people go with their children. But I wouldn't let it lead you astray in any kind of worship. I know back in the old days, the Celts used to believe that that's when the veil between the other side and this side was the thinnest. But what the Celts had as tradition and what we actually see are not necessarily actual facts. And who knows what their motivations were for coming up with this at the time without doing more study. So in the meantime, folks, y'all have a good night. I hope y'all enjoy what's left of it. And thank you for being listeners here, for participating. Couldn't have a show without my listeners any more than I could have one without the guests. I hope to see you guys in the chat room more often. And I'll be posting my schedule every week. Be sure to sign up for a newsletter if you're already a member. And you'll know as my shows are coming up. Every Tuesday, I'll send out a newsletter. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Royce. God bless you, brother.
Good night, Zen, and God bless you, too.
Thank you.